So I'm experimenting with a greater degree of spontaneity now in terms of my videos, and I want to see if I can just explain things very quickly, very clearly, very improvisationally, and conveniently for me, basically. And that way I can put out more videos. I can be more spontaneous. Let's see how it goes. I'm curious. So what I want to do in this video is explain the big picture about enlightenment very briefly, very rapidly, and I don't think long videos are even required to understand. So this experiment is going to be about short videos, and it's going to start with this one. So what's the idea behind it? What's the idea behind enlightenment? Very rapidly, and how does one go about it? So the idea behind it is very simple. We all have existential questions about like what the meaning of life is, what the meaning of death is. Really, I guess you could split it into two pieces. One is, what is the meaning of things, those types of questions, and then related to it, and really the other side of the same coin, is what is the meaning of suffering? So, enlightenment poses an answer to these, and it's based on mystical traditions that have gone across various religions. All the religions have had people, mystics, who have suggested that there is an answer to these questions, but the answer isn't in words. It is sort of directly accessible through a mystical path, and that's what enlightenment is. And I'm here to tell you that this path exists, that it's really extremely simple, and to explain how you get there. Now, before we begin, or really at the beginning, you need an intellectual framework to understand what's going on. And that intellectual framework is the idea of what I would call idealism. So without going into the philosophical weeds, the current paradigm or perspective within which we mostly understand our world, especially for educated people, is what's called materialism. So that's the idea that everything's made out of matter, which is dead, insentient atoms or things that are smaller than atoms even, or energy. But the point is that it doesn't have a mind. And these things link together by the laws of nature and create brains and humans, and those create our experiences. Well, there's another way of looking at things. It's called idealism, also a very old philosophical position with a proud pedigree. And the idea there is that it is not matter that is at the base of the universe, but awareness. Now, why would you think this? There's a lot of complicated philosophical arguments about this that I don't want to get into at this point. But in a very brief nutshell, it is inexplicable how dead matter creates the stuff of our experience. If you think about our brain, it's composed of neurons. They exchange chemicals and electricity. But where in those neurons are you going to find the image of a rose? Not just any image of a rose, but the image of a rose that I specifically see, or that you specifically see. Each of our experiences is unique and different. And we can't get into each other's inner worlds or inner movies just by looking at neurons. There's no way I can break into your experience, or you can break into my experience. So that, in a nutshell, is why we would think that matter isn't all there is. Because if matter was all there was, then you could go from these gray neurons and you could break into someone else's world of experience directly. But in fact, you can't. You have to rely on their words. So all you have access to is their words and maybe some of their neuronal interactions. But you can never actually really experience the world like they're experiencing it. Why is that? Because you're in the way. You can never experience the world like someone else is experiencing it, because it would be you experiencing their world. It would not be them experiencing their world. So that, in a very, very brief nutshell, is why we reject materialism and have this idea that actually everything is instead a kind of thought inside of a universal mind. That's a much more plausible explanation, even though it seems fantastical superficially. So with that in mind, that sort of gives us just a very quick philosophical background, you don't actually have to believe that per se, but you have to be open to that idea. And if you are open to that idea, then it then lays the groundwork for why we might believe in the testimony of those who have said there is such a thing as enlightenment. And when people talk about enlightenment, which, many different traditions, Buddhism, Hinduism, parts of mystical Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all these different sects within these religions have espoused these mystical ideas. What they're talking about is that there's something which is beyond the realm of words and dualities with which we can connect. In fact, with which we are already connected, or even we are already that, and that we can realize this fact for ourselves. And that whatever this is that is sort of beyond the world of duality and beyond the world of images and words is perfect. And it is, in a sense, the answer to all the questions we have about meaning and about suffering. Now, the tradition that I come from is based on the mystical aspects of Hinduism, and it is the most eminent school of Hindu philosophy. It's called Advaita Vedanta. Advaita means non-dual, not two. It means is a realization of the not two-ness of things. And Vedanta means the end of the Vedas. Vedas are the holy books of the Hindus, the oldest holy books in the world. And so is sort of the sort of final chapter of the Vedas in a way. They're called Upanishads. That's what Vedanta is based on. These books called Upanishads. Anyhow, these Upanishads have been interpreted over centuries and millennia, and have acquired a great deal of refinement in the system that they use to talk about how we find this sort of mystical truth for ourselves. And the basic idea is that we are already that truth. We are already that truth. You are already that truth right now. That truth is perfectly peaceful, perfectly satisfying. It is beyond all opposites. And it is beyond existence and non-existence itself. And it's not a concept. It's something that you know for yourself for sure right now, constantly. You yourself are currently already enlightened, but there's something that appears, doesn't actually, but appears to distort or obscure that fact. That's something that we call ignorance. And that ignorance is linked to this idea, which you may or may not have heard of, called, quote unquote, the ego, which is used in many different senses, but in this particular case, it's used to refer to the idea that the belief, the deeply ingrained sense that we have that I am this body, and I am this mind, and I have these memories. I'm a person with this family, with these friends, with this job, with this situation, who faces these circumstances, who is faced with decisions that they have to take, and consequences that might result from those decisions. And I enjoy and suffer various things that happen in my life. All of those things together, that whole sense of being a separate identity, we would call ignorance. And there's a way of seeing through that ignorance to a deeper underlying reality that runs right through it. It's not a somewhere out there. It's actually right here, right now. It's just that it's so obvious, so blindingly obvious that we can't see it. We can't recognize it. And even that's not quite true. The reality is we do recognize it. Even the very thought of non-recognition is itself part of ignorance. Okay, so we have this identity as I'm this body, mind, etc. Penetrate through it for yourself, and you will recognize identity you have with something deeper that is beyond doubt, that is beyond time, that is beyond space, that is not supernatural, that is not a normal God figure, but that will be the answer to all your questions about suffering and all your questions about meaning. Now, how does one go about this? Well, the two basic prerequisites, well, there's only really one basic prerequisite and one action, quote unquote, that must be taken. So the prerequisite is a quiet mind. Actually, this is also the reward. A quiet mind is, in fact, the true self, which is the end and aim of enlightenment, so to say. But the quiet mind, or a sufficiently quiet mind, is also a prerequisite or necessity for engaging on the path of spiritual search. I mean, actually, obtaining a quiet mind is a large part of the search, maybe the majority of it. Now, how does one go about getting a quiet mind? Well, there's two basic prerequisites here. First is understand the intellectual framework of enlightenment to the extent that you need to. Some people need a lot of intellectual explanation. Some people need very little. So realize what you need and obtain it. And this is not simply about reading or listening once or twice. It may involve thinking, questioning, resolving doubts, and this may happen over weeks, months, or years. It took me years. So this is not necessarily something that will be instantaneous, but find the intellectual framework that you agree with and understand, and you only need it to the extent that where you feel satisfied and comfortable. You need to be satisfied with your intellectual framework about why you're engaging in the search and why you believe in it and why you believe enough in it anyway to pursue it. You don't have to believe it completely. You just have to be open enough to put the effort in. The other second aspect of it, and it's not entirely unrelated to the first, is the psychological aspect of it. So we all have various psychological conflicts, things that come from our unconscious, things that come from typically the past, often our childhood. And that sort of in combination with what we deal with in the present moment affects our ability to have a quiet mind, because we have a lot of desires and feelings that we don't fully admit to ourselves. So fundamentally, what you need to do is you need to align your actions with your real desires. Stop lying to yourself about what it is that you actually want. It's not about what you should want or wish you would want or hope you would want. Maybe you want to want, to be physically fit or to eat better or to stop smoking or whatever it is. And that may happen. I'm not saying you shouldn't try for those things. But to acknowledge that, oh, well, maybe a large part of me doesn't want to quit smoking. A large part of me doesn't want to eat healthy or exercise or whatever it is. Or a large part of me feels resentment against friends or parents or society or whatever it is. So to engage in that process of aligning our true feelings and desires with what we think of ourselves as wanting and feeling, and acting in accordance thereby. Now, how do you do this? So, well, a couple ways. One thing I recommend to everybody, all seekers, is therapy, and in particular, psychoanalytically based therapy, which is not the same as all therapy generally. Psychoanalysis is a very intense, most powerful kind of therapy. It's usually 3 or more times a week. And if you're really interested and deeply interested in being a seeker, I do recommend it. Google a psychoanalytic institute or society in your city and ask them for a referral, or contact or go on the webpage of the International Psychoanalytical Association and look for a society near you. You can also get from those same places, you can get psychoanalytical therapy, which is a little bit less intense than psychoanalysis, but it's based on the same principles. This is a very light touch therapy, deep but with light touch. And the idea is not to fix you or to change you, but to help you understand yourself better. And it might help you gain more movement or traction in your life, but I highly recommend it. The other aspect of things is what I call a science of desire. Science of desire is my own lingo for interacting with your own emotions and actions in a way that gives you greater and greater clarity over time. So here's the idea that you need to take your feelings and you need to express or articulate them. And how do you express or articulate them? You express or articulate them using some kind of symbolic medium. It could be words, it could be drawing, it could be anything that you're comfortable with. And you try to express your feelings in a way where you can look at that and say, oh yes, this is exactly what I felt. And that's usually going to require some degree of attention to the uniqueness of the feeling, what it was like for you to feel it. And that often is going to require what I would call metaphor. So I call this entire process metaphorization, because you look at what you're feeling and you try to compare it to other things. Oh, it's like this or it's like that. I know that's technically simile for those of you who are, rhetoric nerds or whatever. But anyway, I call it metaphorization. Metaphor can really take many different forms. It doesn't have to be something so obvious like comparing your anger to a burning volcano. That's a very simple kind of metaphor. It could be something that you're embodying in a narrative, a complex narrative, or the particular way that you construct a song. But the point is that you're trying to get your feelings out. And when you try to get your feelings out and you try to articulate them in a way where you really get out all the detail, if you do that, you will find that you unpack them, and the unpacking of them will tell you about what exactly your feelings really are. You may have sort of assimilated them under a very simple name, and what may seem to be one feeling may actually be like a dozen different feelings with many different thoughts about many different things. So learning about your own feelings, and then you sort of hypothesize about what it is that you actually want and how it may vary from what you think you want. And this usually comes up when there's some kind of resistance to something, right? You're actually troubleshooting a problem in your life. Like you think you want this, but somehow you're dragging your feet. You're not doing it. You think you want it, but you're not doing it, or you keep sabotaging yourself in some way, right? So that's what you're really troubleshooting using this process for, right? Or you're not sure what you want in terms of a job or in terms of some major decision in your life, whether to stay with this person, not stay with this person, or something like that, right? How do you deal with this complex ethical situation? So this is where you take your feelings and you articulate them through the symbolic language, and you break them apart, and you look at all the thoughts that are attached to it, and what the feeling is really like. You try to be as unique and as specific as possible, and then you also think about then hypothetical scenarios. Oh, what if I do this? What if I do that? And then think about, or rather feel the feelings that you have upon those hypothetical scenarios. And then the other sort of way is sort of acting. Try acting along a particular way and see how you feel. Maybe you don't do the whole action, maybe you do a little bit and see what happens. And so you have these feelings, and then you have hypotheses about your desires, and then you have imagined scenarios, and you have action. And when you do the imagined scenarios and action, you have more feelings, and you articulate those again, and then you sort of refine yourself. Like, oh, actually, maybe maybe I don't really want to eat that much healthier, but I am okay with doing some exercise. Or if I do want to eat healthier, it's only in these certain aspects. And you want to be brutally honest, with how you feel. Oh, I resent the fact that I'm trying to control myself in this way. These are the kinds of things you want to know, so that ultimately what you want to do is you want to acknowledge all the different voices or desires within yourself and bring them to a higher harmony. Now, you can't force that harmony. What you can do is you can be honest about what it is you want and all the little different feelings you have about all the different possible things that you want. Like, oh, on the one hand, I want to be healthier. On the other hand, I don't want to eat better. You bring both of those into consciousness instead of denying one side or the other like you would normally do. And then slowly over time, what happens is that builds itself into a synthesis. As you admit these various feelings and desires and take responsibility for them and bring your actions in alignment with them, you'll find that they will build themselves into a synthesis automatically. And this is a great bulk of the work in terms of quieting the mind, because when your actions and your thoughts are accurately reflecting your real feelings and desires, your mind will automatically quiet. Now, of course, desire itself is a sort of never-ending thing, and by following your true desire, you will actually follow it straight and directly into the spiritual, because that's what we all ultimately desire, to sort of reconnect with the well of ultimate and permanent and unchanging fulfillment within us. Now, my approach to what happens next in the sort of other step, so quieting the mind is the first step. The second step is what I'm going to call self-inquiry, is of course heavily influenced by the tradition, Advaita Vedanta, and also a great wise man or sage of the 20th century in that tradition named Ramana Maharishi, a South Indian sage who lived in this little village near this hill called Arunachala. His idea to sort of penetrate the illusion of ignorance, very, very simple, is what he called self-inquiry. And I have other videos on self-inquiry and articles, but I'll summarize it very rapidly. Self-inquiry simply says, look, right now, you know that you are. You know that you're watching this video. You know that you're sitting wherever you're sitting or standing wherever you're standing. You have certain memories. You are aware of all of those things. So who is the you in that case? Or rather, you ask yourself, who is the I in that case? Who is the I who is the subject behind all this knowledge? You know that you are. So who is that I? Who is the I am that essentially. Now, how do you actually go about investigating that? Well, you try to locate it. You try to locate that feeling of I am, that knowledge of I am, which you know with a certainty. Um, and you try to figure out where it's coming from. And let's suppose that you think it's coming from your heart or your head or something like that. Well, we have one rule here in this game, and that is that what you are aware of cannot be the I. So that can't be how you know it. Why is that? Because if you're aware of it, then who is aware of it? Well, I am aware of it. So I know that I am aware of it. If I know that I am aware of it, then that thing of which I'm aware can't be the way that I know that I am, because I know that I'm aware of it. So who is aware of the awareness of that object? I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, think about it and try to clarify it. And feel free to ask me questions as well. The point is, you proceed like that, right? So you think, it's coming from my head. Well, I know I'm aware of this feeling in my head. So I am aware of this feeling in my head. So how do I know that I'm aware of this feeling in my head? And in the same way, you keep going. Well, is it a kind of memory? Well, no, I'm that very concept. It's a kind of memory. I'm aware of that concept. Or if it's a specific memory, well, I'm aware of that specific memory. So that can't be me. So who is this I? How do I know? How do I know I am? How am I so confident of that fact? It isn't an intellectual fact that you know. It's not like, I see this body, therefore I logically conclude I am. No, you know that I am very directly. So when you pursue this I am through this process of self-inquiry, which is a sort of inward investigation of your own experience of something very obvious, something extremely obvious, you'll find that it leads you to a complete inversion of what you think you are. Of what you think you are will turn out to be a kind of illusion. You may glimpse that for a second, and then you'll return to your normal way of thinking about things. Then you do it again. You do it again and again and again, and eventually it becomes easier and easier and easier to see through this illusion. And the periods of time when you've seen through it will grow longer and longer and longer, and eventually sort of the dam will break, and things will click into place, and a critical threshold will be passed, and then it will be very clear to you that there's no going back, and that's what we call enlightenment. So that's basically the process. The other side of the coin from self-inquiry is that self-inquiry is also a process that leads to what we call surrender. So what is surrender? Surrender simply means the idea that I give up all my desires. I don't want things to be any different than the way they are. And surrender also very much relates to the idea of giving up thought. Just stop thinking. Easier said than done. It sounds easy. Surrender is a quote-unquote effortless path, but you'll find it actually takes a lot of effort to engage in surrender, and that we cannot, in fact, surrender ourselves entirely, because the very idea that I am surrendering itself must be surrendered, but it cannot be surrendered because the attempt to surrender it reinforces it. So what you do is you surrender as much as you can, and then eventually something in the universe or in yourself does the rest. That's the case with self-inquiry as well. Self-inquiry, you proceed up to a certain point, you hit a barrier, and then something sucks you in. So this is true of both self-inquiry and surrender. Both are equally valid paths. They kind of lead to each other, actually. They're really both two sides of the same coin. And that's it. So this is a very easily verifiable path. You can simply engage in it, and you'll find it yourself. There's really no need for a lot of mystification. And so this is basically the whole thing. There's a lot of other stuff, gibberish and whatnot, you'll get from other places. That's really, frankly, a distraction. The simple point is that you know that you are, and that if you really deeply try to feel what you are, initially in a kind of maybe a regular routinized practice, and eventually every waking moment you simply pursue that question with all your heart and soul, which you'll be able to do if you have a quiet mind, because you have a good intellectual framework and because you've aligned your desires and your actions, then you will very quite simply discover your true identity as something which is permanent, unchanging, totally uh, beyond the dissatisfaction of the normal world, and which answers your deep questions about meaning, or really rather transcends them, actually, would be the right way to say it. So that's it. That's the big picture of enlightenment. That's all you really need to know. If you pursue it with your whole heart, you're bound to succeed. There's a lot of other things to say randomly. You read the ancient texts if you want more education. Feel free to ask me questions. But that's it in a nutshell. Happiness, satisfaction, meaning, and the ultimate goal of life.